The duck she had.
Well, good afternoon, members of the committee. Are we on the record already? Oh, perfect. Dave Huber, Deputy Director of the Division of Plant Industry at the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, just for the record. Here to talk about H403, which is an act relating to fair labor standards and housing standards for agricultural workers. And I'm here really because at the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, we have a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with the Vermont Department of Labor to conduct H-2A inspections. And H-2A, as I'm sure most of you are aware, if not actively engaged in that program, the H-2A program allows for migrant farm workers to come over to Vermont and where they're assigned a farm. And some come back to farms that they like, mainly because they enjoy what they do. The farmer is nice to them where the housing is appropriate. And my staff conduct inspections of pre-occupancy farm worker housing. So we don't see any farm workers. We see the farmer and we see the housing, and we verify that the housing is adequate to a checklist that were provided by the federal government through U.S. Department of Labor, through the Vermont Department of Labor to us via the memorandum of understanding. This used to be done by fire safety, but I think that it was a lot of work. It was a lot of effort. And so over the years, it became something that Department of Labor would handle, which again was a lot of work. I think they only had one individual who was managing that program, working in that program, doing inspections. And it made sense to partner with the Agency of Agriculture because we go to farms. And so we were helping out a sister agency, and we're in our second iteration of the MOU. It's a 2-year MOU. And through the MOU, we're required to, in a timely manner, inspect pre-occupancy farm worker housing.
Thank you. You're pausing, so okay if I jump in?
Absolutely.
So there's a reference in the bill then, and that's why you're here, to the secretary, and it's referring to the agency, the agriculture secretary, conducting inspections of farm worker housing. It's not clear, I think, in context that refers to housing that's related to the H-2A program specifically. So it sounds like you can confirm that that's the case.
Yes, that's how we read the bill as well.
Okay. We had some testimony coincidentally before lunch on this bill, and we had advocates for dairy farm workers and they were talking about they were thinking about dairy farm housing, but I'm wondering whether bill as proposed would even have any impact on other farm worker housing. We know that we have farm worker housing, on other kinds of farms too. Would it affect other farm worker housing?
I would believe it would. The way I read this bill, it would be, because it does define, I think, for MFO, LFO farms, and some of those farms don't necessarily have to be dairies. They could be other types of animals and or land and or as designated by the Secretary of the Agency of Agriculture. So to give you some numbers, in 2024, through this MOU, which is fully funded by Department of Labor, pass through money from federal Department of Labor, we did 64 inspections. So that's with 4 staff and going through the whole H-2A process. In 2025, we conducted 77 inspections. And so far this year, we've completed 21 inspections. So I would anticipate the number to be in the 60s and 70s for this calendar year as well. But from what I understand, this bill would also lump in a whole bunch of other farms, which could be dairies, as I'm sure Migrant Justice brought up earlier today. But I guess my question would be, how would this be funded? Because the H-2A is funded. And that's how we're able to do this. But I do only have 4 inspectors, and
there's no funding in the bill.
right.
So the current inspection regime as it exists, you're not going onto a dairy farm to look at the housing.
We go to any farm that's enrolled in the H2A program that has put in a job order through a US Department of Labor database called FLAG, the FLAG system. Once they put in that job request, which they outline how many months of experience their workers that they're looking for, and what the rates of pay would be, what the descriptions are, where they're located, then that gets transmitted to Department of Labor, who then assigns locations to Vermont Agency of Agriculture to go and inspect. So say, Representative Burt, you have a farm and you have housing and you have two houses, say. You would put in an order for as many workers as you like that would fit into those houses. And then labor would let us know the addresses of those two residences, nothing more, nothing less. And we would go and inspect those residences. If we go to those houses and find that it's adequate, it meets the number of toilets, the whole code, which we're not experts on, by the way. Fire safety is the expert on code, because we're not code enforcers. We're, as you know, pesticide and feed fertilizer inspectors. But we would go through a checklist that we're given, and we would run through those questions. But those questions aren't the same as what's in this bill. These are more open-ended narrative questions, as opposed to how many toilets do you have?
And you would typically, I think you said that you're not encountering or you're not meeting with the farm workers themselves, and maybe not with the owners, the farm owners, or
We do.
Yeah.
For the most part, the farm owners are there when we start, and we like it when they walk with us because they know their house. They let us in, they know their housing best, and any questions that we have, they can answer. And if they can't, then we can't pass them at that time.
Yeah, and the sort of the whole idea, I think, in the bill, for this part of the bill is while you're there, ask the farm workers to fill out this survey. And seems like the farm workers won't be there to have you hand them the survey because they're out working.
Right.
You're not coming in the morning or evening when they're most likely to be at home.
No, you're correct. Those workers may have to get called off, I would assume, in order to meet with us if they're available and if the farmer is amenable.
Representative Nelson.
Does the agency ever receive complaints or and maybe complaints a strong word, or requests for action on dairy farm housing?
And sometimes we'll receive notification that, there's been a complaint made about some sort of housing provided for a worker at a dairy. And so it's important to note that we do have a robust complaint system on the Agency of Agriculture's website. I can provide that address to the committee if you like. But we also have a US Department of Labor complaint site, Department of Labor for Vermont complaint, and Vermont Fire Safety has their own complaint tool as well. There's no lack of ways to complain. It's just difficult to force somebody to complain about housing.
So I've got the bill in front of me and you don't, Dave, so I'm putting you at a disadvantage, or maybe you do. Okay, good. So this is new proposed statutory language. I'm on page 4, line 12. Adequacy of farm employee housing, inspection. Okay. And then, so the next line is the one I was referring to. When the secretary conducts a scheduled inspection of a farm under chapter 215 of the title, this Title 6. So we're talking about the same thing here. This is no, okay.
It's different. So
It's this inspection.
this inspection might be when the Water Quality Division goes out and conducts an inspection for MFOs, which I believe are every 3 years, they have to conduct an inspection, LFOs annually. Whereas my team, when we go out for inspections, we usually do unannounced because pesticides are a different beast. And then when we do have an announced inspection, it's, we're out there for a certain reason. It's for pesticide usage records, checking fertilizer, maybe sampling an incoming load of feed. But no, H2A is also a scheduled inspection, but you're not, I don't know that you would find that under chapter 215.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Okay, good. Thank you. Representative Lipsky.
You know, we took testimony on H2A,
Mhm.
which from my recollection was seasonal agricultural workers.
Yes.
Yet historically, and you're leading this discussion for dairy, which we heard testimony this morning, and they are historically not seasonal workers, because it's a 365-day, 24-hour responsibility. So it doesn't seem like you've been delegated to do any of it. So H2A is for a very specific purpose.
It is.
So, you know, why are we talking about dairy farms when almost no dairy farms are seasonal?
So I think maybe the better question, I mean, to be perfectly honest, is why are we talking about seasonal when the bill is about dairy farms? I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fine, but you know.
Either, it's always interesting information, right? Whatever we get. So I think that what the bill is talking about has to do with, not generally speaking anyway, H2A visa workers. So
The bill is.
the bill is not, the bill is talking about.
And I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yes. H2A is a good example of a funded program that we have resources and staff for, where if there is a problem that comes to light, there's money to be able to hopefully fix that problem, or a triage process that we have in place with multiple agencies, Agency of Ag, Department of Labor, and Division of Fire Safety. So it's really three heads coming together here to try to make something whole. I don't know that would be the case.
I have a question when there's a chance.
We're going to let you jump in then, Representative Boslin.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, I'm hearing that the H2A visa program has a thorough house inspection program and it's funded. So how is it funded? Is it funded through the fees when people apply for their visas or through some other channel?
Representative, that's a really good question. I believe it's funded through the U.S. Department of Labor and then passed through Department of Labor through this MOU that we have with Department of Labor. So that's how we get that money. But I can't really speak to how the initial funding is. That would be a good question for the Vermont Department of Labor. But there is.
So it sounds like since most of the workers on dairy farms are undocumented, we're not going to have a comparable entity that could fund inspections. We would have to figure something else out on the state level, which will be more complicated, but we'll have to keep working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Yeah, and not to trivialize it, I think that the bill envisions when the agency is already on the farm making a visit that it has to do anyway, for other reasons, that while they're there, they would try and find the employees and ask them to fill out this survey. And that might be, even if the employees were right there, that would take time. So it would require some agency time that isn't currently being, used that way. Yeah, Representative Nelson.
Remember, Chair, that last year in Act 67, that the Agency of Agriculture is no longer conducting the CAFO inspections on the farms. It's A&R, so maybe we ought to get A&R in here and see who they got to put in staff to take care of those issues.
Excellent resource we have here, our CAFO expert.
I was there all morning. It wasn't pretty.
You should also hear, in addition to A&R, you should probably hear from Department of Fire Safety.
Yes.
Mike DeRocher would be an excellent resource for you. And, you know, there are some really good examples of success stories here. You know, when VHCB and Champlain Housing Trust have come together, they have provided some funding for some farms, notably, yeah, Dina Benjamin up in the Enosburg area. I don't know if he talks about that, but
They have.
Yeah, we've had an opportunity to hear from them and see actually before and after.
yeah,
So we know that there are examples, yeah, of how.
Yes,
Success stories, yeah.
Really good example.
Let's get at least one more question, Representative O'Brien.
I just more on your MOU. I just wondered how this works. You said you had 4 staff who do this. Are those these limited service positions and that's all they do, or is this is sort of like, you know, 0.25 of your FTE is to go out and do these and you'll be reimbursed by labor?
yeah, these are my same specialists, field agents who go out and conduct all investigations, all inspections. So this is added to their workload as, and the MOU says in a timely manner, we have to complete this. So I received an email with the job order. I divvied it out. Within 48 hours, we've made contact with the farm to set up a time for an inspection. So we try to group them so that when we're in that area, visiting the golf course and, you know, Brattleboro golf course, we also hit up a Brattleboro H2A, but these are more time sensitive because workers are dependent upon getting approval, right, in order to make that flight over into America, into Vermont. And so if the farmer fails to adequately have a decent inspection, then they run the risk of not having those workers in a timely manner or at all.
Let's see.
My understanding is these inspections are a requirement of the visa
Yes,
in the H2A.
they are.
So that has to be, you want it when workers are there, these have to be inspected before they're issued. The visa, which allows them to get it.
Yeah.
So, it's a whole narrow scope.
Any other questions? Come in. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just one more.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it a little bit, but when, you know, you do an inspection and you're like, actually, Farmer John, you can't use a tiny email or but is there a process of, you know, working through that to be like, you need, you know, an apartment with this, and this in order to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've been working with Department of Labor and Fire Safety to come up with more checklists and push that out to a broader audience of H2A employers so that they are ready for it, kind of a what to expect when being inspected kind of thing. Because we don't want to show up, shut somebody down for the inspection and say, you know, you're out of luck on having your employees come in a timely manner or at all at that point.
You also look into transportation at all? Because is that part of it, that you couldn't necessarily have a dorm 3 miles away with no transportation?
We, on the checklist, what we look for are, you know, is the ceiling height appropriate? Is there enough square footage per person? If you have bunk beds, it's different than if it's single beds. Are there enough egresses and ingresses into these places? And if an employee who has taken a lot of pride in where they're living for H2A purposes builds a little partitioned off area, unfortunately, if they don't have a window, I think that's 20 by 24 inches, they're unable to have that be an actual room, and that work then goes by the wayside and they have to take down all of that effort, which is usually funded by the worker themselves. And so it is a rather strict process. Transportation, though, you know, usually farms do help out with transportation. They also don't want their workers being too far from the farm, right? For many reasons, but one of them being productivity. You want to have folks really wake up and go to work and then come back to a nice place. And that's the H2A program in a nutshell.
Representative.
Transportation is the requirement of the H2A program.
Yeah.
Separate from the housing section, but.
Get people from the housing.
Well, and then once a week to be able to go to the bank, grocery shop,
Yeah.
hospital.
But we don't inspect that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the last thing going, if our congressional delegation is listening, if they would expand the H2A program, it would be widely received
Yeah.
by all of us in the state of Vermont.
That would obviously answer.
That's the
All
answer.
the problems, yeah, I know.
All the problems, yeah.
Well,
Well, a lot
I
of
guess you
them,
could say. it
Yeah.
would.
and then Dave would have funding to get 4 more inspectors.
I think, thank you, Dave, for coming. It was,
Thank you, committee.
yeah, good to know all of this, so appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And we have, I think next week, colleagues from the agency and Department of Labor are coming back to talk about other sections of the bill. So.
Next Wednesday or Thursday, I believe. Yes. Excellent.
All right. We're going to quickly pivot to wood product manufacturing, and thank you all for gathering. We invited the Land Use Review Board to come and comment on the draft language that we reviewed. It was just this week. It seems like it was a long time ago, but Ellen had come in and shown us language that she put together, based largely, I think, on language that the board itself had provided us as a recommendation to basically enact some of the recommendations in the report that we've looked at a few times. So I don't know who from the board, if anyone is eager to come up to the table.
Sitting here?
No, that's, all the chairs are free, yeah.
Two chairs.
Thank you. Thank you.
They're arguably at three.
Okay.
So, would it help? I'm gonna just maybe say to the committee and to anybody that this draft bill is on our page today. Is it under Ellen's name? Yeah, it's right at the top of today's date, committee bill draft 1.2. It's the same bill, same version that we looked at earlier in the week. And hopefully what we'll do in the next half hour or so is just hear from the board your reactions to it. I will say, and I have not talked to you, so I have no idea what your reactions are going to be. Other than that, we tried for the most part to mimic what you were proposing. We had some feedback, and as a reminder, there were 3 parts here. We had there were 10 recommendations, and we focused on 9 and 10. And then also, for good measure, I added acting on recommendation number 1, which is the fact sheet. And wanted to put that in there just to hear your thoughts on that, Billy.
Done. Check.
Okay.
Yes, so it's on our website.
So turning it over to you then.
Go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, so the board had.
Well, let's introduce
Oh,
ourselves.
sorry. So just again, we've met, but Kirsten Sultan, I'm one of the 5 board members.
And Janet Hurley, chair of the board. So,
Yeah.
yes.
So we were able to meet and go over the draft that Ellen has prepared. And thank you for considering the board's draft as part of that background. And we don't have any objection to what, the modifications and the current content, but just to note, as Janet just did, the last item 3 that you referred to, we've already completed it in coordination with ANR, both their planning and regulatory office and including input from Forest Parks and Recreation. So that's done.
So we would say strike.
Yeah,
section 3.
we would think it's unnecessary. We did send a copy late yesterday, which I think is already up on the committee documents.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw something, I didn't realize that's what it was.
Yeah. There's web versions on our website.
So, good, we'll take a look at that. And did you do it just because we put it in the draft?
Oh, no,
Because
underway.
it was
I
our
don't- you-
recommendation.
Well, right. I don't know if you remember me making known earlier that this was underway and we were in the process of coordinating with.
I'm sure you said that more than once, and glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Thank you. So otherwise, no concerns, it sounds like.
No.
Supportive.
Supportive, okay, all right.
So not just no concerns, but positively
Yeah.
supportive.
Okay, good. While you're here then, maybe we could just, I want to see whether folks have questions. I have at least one question.
And I have some questions from the rural caucus and an email and a letter that's been sent out to several newspapers that's away from wood product manufacturing, if I could ask those questions.
Okay, do you mind just holding?
Yeah, I do
Before you leave
not
anyway,
mind holding.
Okay, all right, good.
Thank you.
Is it about, I'm not even gonna say.
Yeah. It's not about their culture.
Okay. So, one of the things that we've been wrestling with here is I don't want to say the exceptions, but the situations where there's already a permit condition or a situation where somebody might come along and propose some development and there might be conditions attached to that would restrict cutting theoretically. And I think we understand that the example that I've used or that somebody used for me, and it works for me anyway, is screening. So if you've got a permit and it said you have to leave these trees here so that the neighbors can't see the building or something like that, that seems fairly straightforward. At the same time, the problem that the bill is trying to solve is allowing cutting to happen by and large, even if there is permit in place or could be a permit coming along. Is there, what I think I'm just a little worried about, and others might be worried about too, is where is that line going to be drawn? So how restrictive could permit conditions reasonably be for development on a parcel where the rest of the parcel is managed forest, say, and somebody would like to be able to cut there under 2,500 feet without having to go back and get, an amendment or something to.
I think Kirsten should take that because for 19 years, she staffed a district commission and might have a better idea of what kinds of, areas might have that restrictive condition.
Yeah, so a cutting restriction could come about as part of an Act 250 permit condition decided by a district commission if it has relevancy to one of the Act 250 criteria reviewed as part of a project development permit application review. I guess I was thinking, so it could be an aesthetic buffer, it could be a stream buffer, it could be some area of necessary wildlife habitat or other other buffering, limitation on tree cutting that is a result of that project meeting the Act 250 criteria, that tree cutting restriction is in effect on the property. And I thought if with your permission, maybe give a quick example, like a real life example of how it works now and then what this proposed legislation, how that would shift.
Yeah, real life example.
Sure. And this is like Northeast Kingdom. I think it was in the town of Reigate. It was a quarry. It was actually not one that I had staffed. It was still had an active valid permit. It was in operation. And the owner called the district office and said, I want to do some logging on this property. What are my, can I do logging? And so what I did as the staff coordinator is I pulled out the file and evaluated it together with the owner. And we determined that there was a buffer in effect around the perimeter of the quarry that was of some order of width of, I don't remember, let's call it. It was not insignificant. It was maybe 100 or 200 feet. And so I could make known that your logging is exempt, even on this property that is already governed by and under jurisdiction of an Act 250 permit, except that you can't cut in that buffer zone for free. So that's kind of the current status of how that would work when you have commercial development and a logging forestry activity. What this language would do would allow an owner to come in and say, I've got a piece of property that I'm designating for logging, forestry management, and I'm also planning to do this project. Maybe it's commercial, maybe it's some residential thing, but for whatever reason, it's triggering Act 250. And at this point in time, they can say, this land, this portion of the tract I'm designating for logging forestry, and this other land is the Act 250 project land. And the commission can recognize that as part of the permit decision. And they can say the logging forestry land is not subject to Act 250 jurisdiction. the permit conditions are not in effect in that area. And future, changes or uses on that other logging forestry portion of the tract would only come into Act 250 for review if they triggered into themselves under some, other area of the statute. It's not part of the land under Act 250 by virtue of the commercial or other Act 250 project permit. So I don't know if that's explaining it, but the commission, as part of its review of determining, the location of that logging forestry, call it exempt land, they would be responsible for making sure that there weren't like areas where tree cutting would need to be restricted to meet the Act 250 criteria for the Act 250 project.
So the first part of the story, the quarry part of the story was the way things are now. And then the second half was how it would be.
Could be. You could do this at the onset, and then the person would know upfront, that they could log or do other activities on that land. It's not under Act 250 by virtue of this Act 250 permit. Is
But
that
also the difference is that the other one was a pre-existing project, not a new project. And it had an Act 250 permit with that existing condition with that 200-foot buffer around the quarry.
Yeah.
So, and it was a much larger parcel presumably, right? And the rest of it could be logged, no problem.
right? So does that help your understanding a little bit? Like in the first instance, like all of the land ends up under Act 250, and you have to consider the implication of undertaking, logging activity over time because that it's under Act 250. Whereas with this proposal, it would provide the opportunity to designate and say, this is logging forestry land. It's not going to be under Act 250 jurisdiction alongside, this other Act 250 project land use on the same tract.
Representative Bryant?
But the example you gave was an existing Act 250 permit. And then,
This would be a new one.
right, so in that case, though, if they already had a permit with this, if this became law, do they have to go through the permitting again to sort of get, to debuffer?
So there is this existing feature that I think has been made known or mention of and is part of the fact sheet and guidance called Stony Brook. So that is an available avenue where people can come in, even if the land isn't designated for farming or logging forestry, they can come in and say, this subset of the land is the project and it's the land that supports it under the criteria. And they can ask the commission to refine how much land is under Act 250 jurisdiction. I think I'd have to apologize. I think I can probably look and answer the question if I do a little quick research, but I think there's a case that occurred for the farming exemption where it was like the language that's contemplated basically parallels the language that's already in place for farming. And I think there was an instance where that owner came in for a commercial project on a farm and then already had an Act 250 permit and returned to Act 250 and was able to avail themselves of that farming feature of Act 250 after the fact. So conceptually, I want to say probably this could occur for existing permits, but I can
Yeah,
look
it's an
that up
amendment.
and,
Yeah. Or it could be a new project
right.
on a larger parcel.
We just never, or I hadn't thought of sort of the Stony Brook example with an existing Act 250 permit and property owner sort of wanting to do something else on their land.
You can definitely do Stony Brook with an existing Act 250 permitted project. You can do that now. The question is whether or not this new language would provide a more simplistic opportunity to come back and say, all this land is logging forestry, all this land is farming, and ask the commission to make that determination.
Really, it'd be this land supports the development. And so this land is subject to Act
Right.
250 and the rest is logging, forestry, or farming, and it's not subject to the permit, but you would make that determination as you, as the commission reviewed the project and issued the permit. So it would be part of the permit conditions would define the area that is subject to Act 250.
Representative
Gee, I'm
Burt,
just looking for,
you want to keep looking, or did you have,
oh, go ahead, keep talking.
Okay. Representative Burt and then Representative Lipsky?
I think I'm all set.
Okay.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
Just trying to clarify your point. My question is that 100-acre property, 9 is dedicated to active management, forestry. You want to take 10 acres out of that for a commercial use or another use that triggers Act 250. Do you require that there be meets and bounds in a survey that's recorded, or you can just draw a sketch of the
plan.
Yeah, a
property,
map,
a site plan that says
yeah.
this area along this roadway or access is what we're considering for development.
Yeah.
So it's not a big
You
burden.
don't need to get a survey.
No,
Do not need to get.
no,
a
Or an
survey.
nor do
atlas
you,
survey
nor
or-
do you need to subdivide the land. It's
Thank
just
you.
drawing on a map, here's the subset of the land.
Thank you.
So the answer to your question is, I believe that yes, this could extend to existing permitted projects. This did at least once occur in Act 250 for farming. It was the Boyden Farm in Cambridge, Vermont. I can give you the case number if you're interested, but they returned to Act 250 to ask Act 250 to recognize that this acreage that was in farming was not, under Act 250 jurisdiction.
The event barn required an Act 250 permit to Boyden's, but the rest of the farm, the vineyard, the beef operation, the whole.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it was the
there are
event farm
other-
specifically. I think it was a
right.
shop at the time. This was back in
But
2006.
whatever portions of the property supported the jurisdictional project would be under jurisdiction. And those that did not support the jurisdictional project
Right,
are exempt farm.
right.
lands.
Which is how it is now for farming. It's just explicitly written in the statute that this can occur.
So the 10 criteria, or however many we're talking about here.
But then 30B, once we get the new one
Sub-criteria.
established.
This is not our committee's, area of expertise, and I'm wondering, just because you mentioned, I think, wildlife and as has to do with
Like
one
a
of the
deer yard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how is that likely to, or how might that come into play and end up restricting logging in what we might think of as the undeveloped portion of this hypothetical parcel, beyond what a logger might think? So I'm going to maybe put a house, or maybe I'm going to put a little sawmill on my 100 acres, and that's only taking up 10 acres. Am I going to be able to log the 90 acres? Or is one of the criteria going to say, you have to leave 30 acres here because there is wildlife habitat?
So I think there has been at least one case that was made known to the stakeholder group where there was a situation where there was a tree cutting restriction on land that was being developed with a wood products manufacturing project. Maybe it was a sawmill. And there was a resulting tree cutting restriction attributable to necessary habitat. I don't remember if it was deer wintering area or bear, what it was, and I think the Agency of Natural Resources came in and said, the timber from that area is going to go right into the sawmill on the property, and we're asking for that protection. And the commission determined that there was a nexus there and imposed that tree cutting restriction on that area. I think that has occurred at least once. Other ways that habitat could be impacted by project could be maybe like a residential project where there's the impact of people occupying land like next to it. And there's a delineation of what it is. And there's, A&R, Fish and Wildlife Department comes in and asks for some form of protection. So ski areas have run into, and I feel like I feel like the Agency of Natural Resources could much better speak to this, but they can sometimes make known that there's the sensitive habitat area that they think that an Act 250 project may have some impact on, and they're asking that it be identified, protected.
So
And
it's
so that-
if that project has an impact on the resource.
A potential impact, and the commission recognizes that and determines as part of that planning. Sometimes it happens as part of like a master plan. That can occur.
Thank you. Yeah. Representative, somebody else want to say something? Yeah, go ahead, Jed.
Again, this isn't really a question, but I'll present it, so it's a clarification, may help answer Chair Durfee's way. If you're in current use and you have a management plan, it will show a deer wintering yard that has to be known and protected. It will show that there are vernal pools or unique, rare or endangered species. That's because it's under current use. You would need to get that plan approved by a county forest.
Right.
It's,
So,
for example.
I don't know if was there a question there?
No,
I mean,
No,
like the
it's-
applicant could provide that information to the district commission to show that there's some other protection. And so it perhaps would be unnecessary in that instance to then prescribe that there be an additional restriction through Act 250. But, it's fact specific and project specific and.
I mean, I think you did help clarify for me that was what you were.
The question we don't have, that my inquiry didn't expose, is if it's 100-acre woodlot, it's now being reduced to 90, but they're not in current use. Do they have to follow the AMPs, and the commission required that they provide additional information on rare endangered species? Or
so the forestry and logging, unless it's over 2,500 feet, is not jurisdiction. So, so it's the jurisdictional wood products manufacturing proposal that triggers the need for the permit, and it's only going to be on a subset of the property. And so I think the question you're asking is, how do we know how far those permit conditions might extend into the rest of that
The
property?
question I'm asking, yeah,
And-
hypothetically.
Well, right, so if the designation of the area of logging forestry land, occurs as part of that development application review, or if it occurs afterwards, it includes determining, are there portions of that land where there would need to be tree cutting restrictions to address all of the Act 250 criteria? And
the project.
if so, right, for the project.
Yes.
Right, and if so, then the commission could impose tree cutting restrictions. They wouldn't be eligible to be omitted from the Act 250 project area.
Yes, I see Ledge Council might want to add something to this
Can I just-
discussion.
Further clarify to Ellen Chakowski, Office of Legislative Counsel. A&R will get notice of any permit application, and so they will get notice of this proposed area. And I think they would probably be the first ones to raise if they think there would be an issue with a sensitive habitat that would need the protection. And then also any other of the abutting landowners would also get notice, and so there potentially would be, as part of the application review, back and forth with the other people who'd be raising these issues and say, well, A&R has concerns about this area. Perhaps we should actually have the buffer here. Landowner, is that what you see on the site? So there would be a back and forth that way.
Yeah, okay. Good, yeah, thank you. Representative Burt.
And this might be, I don't know who this is a question for, but is there a way to incorporate, like Jed was asking about if the land is already in Kansas, has a forestry plan, identifies these sites already, would it be wise to incorporate a little bit of that language into this bill to address that and say, you know, that plan will be acknowledged and you know, instead of having this whole act, you know, having it be Act 250 jurisdictional necessarily to say that part of the process of carving out the 10 acres, for instance, you know, the forestry plan be, you know, acknowledged for its, you know, for its purposes and identifying those and not have to go through I don't know, is there a way to
I think
to
what
mitigate the
Kirsten,
process?
I think what Kirsten described is it would happen during the review and as
Yeah,
Ellen's
so-
describing, it would happen during the hearing, if there's a hearing, or during the review, if it's a minor
So
permanent.
something like that would already be, if
Considered.
somebody had a current use plan, that would be
My-
considered in the process.
My own direct experience when I was a coordinator, when people had property in current use, they typically would make that known and provide a copy of the plan as part of their submittal. The language that is on the table is quite broad insofar as, you know, logging forestry. It doesn't prescribe a minimum acreage or say you have to be in current use. The board hasn't discussed, you know, if we think like that kind of element should be recognized or incorporated into it somehow.
Without discussing it with
Yeah,
the
we-
board,
I-
I think it feels like it's not advisable because of the sort of case specific nature of these applications. And so it does routinely get submitted with the permit application if somebody has a plan
Not-
in place.
Yeah, I think I can think of one instance when it, like the applicant didn't, like, forgot to include it or just didn't make it known that this property was in current use. I mean, it's not like a requirement. But typically it would be.
Can I just ask, because we're about out of time and well, I do,
And yet,
and we've got, we don't have to,
it's not here.
we're not making any final decisions today. But I did want to ask about the two pieces of language, two expressions. One is the devoted to language, which, so this is page 1,
Yeah,
bottom line, and I think it is similar language to what currently exists for agriculture.
Same word.
When I read this the first time, I thought that, what does that mean? And that, is that defined somewhere? But we do understand that since it's not new to the board, that it might make sense to stick with that same language, even though it seems a little arcane or I don't know what.
I think it
is in
was, so
what
the
board-
farming
Yeah,
language, I think, was put into the statute in, I think, 2002. And I'm not aware that it hasn't worked. I mean, I've seen it used, and it's like similar to an applicant identifying these are logging forestry lands. This is the current planned use of those lands. If people have land in farming, I think it's worked fine.
I can imagine somebody thinking, well, if it's devoted to farming, you can see that it's, you know, tilled or something's growing there. Devoted to logging and forestry might not be as obvious if you have a 40-year management plan and it hasn't been, you know, touched in a long time. So just want to be sure that that isn't going to be misinterpreted in a way that, you know, we're not thinking about.
Yeah,
So just flagging
I
that.
know, that's a great
do you have an
thing
answer,
to
Ellen?
consider.
I'm not sure what you would replace it with. But. I can think about it. Used for, or.
Yeah, and I don't have the suggestion either. Yeah. Okay, Representative O'Brien.
Just another hypothetical. So we're talking about, you know, the 100 acres, 10 acres development. The Stony Brook goes through the Stony Brook exemption. And then, in future years, I want to do another 10 acres with the development. Is that an amendment or do I have to sort of Stony Brook it all over again, the whole lot?
So you have a
Probably.
10-acre Act 250 project area and there's 90 acres that's not under Act 250 and you want to expand the project.
Yeah, now, but it's still part of the same parcel.
Yeah, I think you would revisit that question. And by the way, it's a little confusing, but this actually is not Stony Brook. It's Stony Brook-like,
Right, okay.
but so I think the commission would reassess. Like if you're doing development activity in that 90-acre portion of the tract, that has triggered Act 250 review, then you would, if you still wanted to retain that remaining 80 acres in logging forestry, you would revisit, sort of where that boundary is. Yeah, you'd have to do that. You'd have to update that.
Permanent amendment.
So it's a permanent amendment, yeah, it's not sort of.
But again, only
Act 250.
only if what's happening on the 90 acres, like triggered Act 250 jurisdiction. Like it's not under Act 250, maybe, I mean, if this was the outcome, if someone wanted to put a couple houses or sort of buy 2 lots or something, if this is in a rural area and they haven't been doing a lot or housing unit development activity, they typically wouldn't fall under Act 250 jurisdiction, currently. So it depends, it would depend on the specifics of what was being undertaken.
You started by saying that you think this language is great. Or you agree with you find it acceptable? Maybe
Yeah.
you didn't say it was great. And I'll just flag that we had some conversation about the 2 new definitions, forestry and logging. There are in other places in statute slightly different definitions of forestry and logging, and there was some suggestion that maybe we want to not reinvent these terms every time we are writing something new. So I think we might still look at that. I'm not sure who might specifically want to change something or just think maybe it'd be a good idea. But if we do anything differently there, would it be helpful for you to know that we're doing something different?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll just mention quickly, part of the reason for providing those definitions was to underscore that those activities, have this status within Act 250 and can be mapped out as sort of happening on quote unquote exempt lands, providing that Act 250 permit conditions are met. Like that's kind of an important underpinning of how we thought about this.
So having the definitions in Title 10, Chapter 150.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement with. Sorry, say that again.
So within our, the Act 250 statute, having those definitions in there is important
Yeah,
for the reason that
In Title
Kirsten just gave.
Yeah,
Yes,
we wanted to give recognition that the log yards would be considered part of logging, providing they meet the AMPs, but also that logging as a whole would not be something that contradicts or negates Act 250 permit requirements.
I think that we're perfectly happy and agree with having definitions here. It's just whether the definition should be the same definition that is used somewhere else for logging and forestry.
We couldn't find a definition of logging.
Okay.
Perhaps the issue that I'm mentioning could be accomplished a different way in the statute, but we would be happy to come back, or we did provide our draft to A&R a few weeks ago, and they've been letting us know that they'll get back to us soon, but we haven't heard from them yet. So
We're going to try and move forward with this, see. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it in statute where you're talking about definitions, section 110 VSA 6001, definitions of development,
That's
44
Yeah.
wood products manufactured is defined.
We'd be adding
52
adding
forestry is defined. 53 logging is defined.
right.
Is that all in 10 VSA.
It's
Well,
not, right now, they're
This
not
is the
there.
draft.
This is just
This
the,
is-
Yeah.
this is
Right.
what's being
The draft.
proposed, yeah. Otherwise, it's not there.
By.
Wood Products is there,
Yeah.
but we're suggesting to
To
cross
change
out
it,
the
to cross out the
log
log
yards.
yards.
Right.
Yeah,
And
but the other two aren't
The
there.
other two are new.
Yeah,
This is what, yeah, what we've got here is really now, it's been informed by the LURB. But it's our language now. This is legislative, proposed legislative language. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
I'll step out in the hallway and just ask him a couple of.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. We,
Okay. Well, we're
you
getting
just
set
keep
up for
the
the
things
next.
moving, yeah.
And
If he just travels.
Oh,
one down.
I haven't decided whether
There you go.
I'm gonna go, I
I'm gonna
see Ann Watson.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Started snowing at 10 down there.
We'll be here if you.
Right, it's coming
I'll
up.
be back.
Yeah.
Maybe you could just. Jessica should find out from health, I guess it would be too.
Okay.
So if you just kind of give our way.
Hi, Jessica.
Is there gonna be another meeting or is that it for today?
Representative Boslin, we have another several hours of testimony.
Not
Awesome.
It'll be several hours from us.
We are here, I think, until 3, and next we're gonna turn to heavy metals and baby food.
Okay.
All right, great. I'll mute again.
Okay, yeah, and please unmute at any time if you have a question, and we'll be happy to take it.
Got it.
Let's see, and we have Representative Boslin online, I think Representative Bartholomew online, I'm just doing a quorum check here. I think we're still good. So, hi, John.
Hi.
What's that? I heard an echo.
It's John.
Okay, not sure why though.
Snowing in Heartland, John?
Yeah, it's starting to snow. It's coming down.
All right, well, let's move on. Why is that happening?
He's not.
He's on.
It shouldn't matter, he's not in the room for this.
Here, probably, let's
Oh, yeah.
see. Those people.
Anyway, while we're figuring this out, welcome to. We are joined by some folks who look familiar and some who don't. So we start with some introductions.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for having us here from the Department of Health. My name is Julia Rell. I am one of the deputy commissioners at the Health Department, and the Division of Environmental Health is one of the divisions that falls within my purview. So that's why I am here today. And I'm joined by my colleague, our state toxicologist.
Hi, my name is Andrea Kirk. I'm relatively new. I've been here a year as a state toxicologist. Thank you.
So Andrea is here to save me because I am neither a doctor nor a toxicologist, and I don't even play one on TV. So any technical questions, I'll defer to Andrea on.
And I'll just ask before we start, I don't want to assume, but you've had a chance to look over the bill, and we thought that it would be helpful to have the health department give us any feedback that you might have on it.
Certainly, yes. So today we're really here to talk about the health impacts of heavy metals, particularly in baby food. So it'll be relatively high level, and you may have already heard a lot of this information from some of the other people that you've had testifying, but we always appreciate having the health department have an opportunity to talk about health impacts. So heavy metals can impact a child's health. And the 4 heavy metals that we're talking about in this particular bill, lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. They're all metals or metalloids, And they all can play a role in altering a child's development. And these changes can be permanent. Some of those changes may well be permanent. The metals that can cause these health problems, it can start in infancy and continue into adulthood. Long-term exposure can increase or may increase the risk of cancers and cause damage to kidneys, heart, and central nervous system. And what's particularly important in this particular bill is that for children, they can be more vulnerable for adults because of their small size and because of the concentration in which they may be taking in this food. So we'll go through each of the heavy metals and just quickly talk about the individual impacts of the metals. It's also important to note, although each metal has sort of its own spectrum of potential impacts, when you start to combine 2 or 3 or 4 exposures of the different metals together, it can have a synergistic effect in terms of, you may have 2 that impact the cardiovascular system or the heart of a child, but they may have different impacts. And so when they're combined, it sort of makes it even worse for the kiddo. So moving on to the health effects of lead, I think probably most people are well aware of the health impacts of lead and that there is no safe level of lead in the body. Even low levels of lead can impair development in children, and that can show up in injury to their brain, their kidneys, their nervous systems. It can slow down their growth and their development, making it harder for them to learn. It may damage hearing or speech, which also impacts learning, and cause behavior problems. And you may know that many children in Vermont are exposed to lead in their homes. We have an aging house, exactly. So there are still children that are getting exposed to lead paint. So that's sort of that's the lead. Mercury, again, people are familiar, probably most familiar with mercury in fish, and particularly the impact on pregnant women. And mercury in fish was in the news for quite a while. But mercury in a child's body can affect their hearing, their learning, movement and coordination and balance, and also their heart function. Arsenic. I was in arsenic and old lace when I was in high school. So, you hear arsenic and you're like, oh boy, I know, arsenic. Whew. But arsenic obviously can be very damaging to children. It can alter their neurodevelopment, leading to impaired memory, learning problems, and behavioral problems. Increased risk of cancer, including skin cancer, bladder cancer, and lung cancer. It can cause heart defects and can increase the risk of early death. And we can, in areas of Vermont, there are higher levels of arsenic in some of the drinking water than other areas. So kids may be getting exposed in that way as well. And again, with all of these, it's sort of like the more exposure, the more intake, the more likelihood of health impacts for children. The last one is cadmium. For a lot of folks, that may be the one that they're least familiar with. Cadmium in a child's body can alter brain development in infancy and damage kidneys. And kidney disease, it is a rising public health concern. 90% of adults with kidney disease don't know they have it. So really reducing heavy metal exposure in for infants and toddlers will reduce the risks to pediatric health outcomes.
Questions, okay?
Sure.
Just while you were, are for toxic heavy metals there. Once they're in a human body, do they not ever work their way out again? There's nothing with nutrition or exercise or lifestyle that you can essentially purge them.
You know, well, lead will go mostly into people's bones, and it can cycle out as calcium needs change, say during growth or as you get older and you have a little bone thinning. It just stays in there and keeps cycling through. So it has many opportunities to do damage across the lifespan. Lead, yes.
Mhm.
Cadmium also tends to stay, and it tends to accumulate in the kidneys. Arsenic is water soluble, and so it has it'll stay there for a shorter period of time. But while it's there, it causes damage. Yeah. And what was mercury? Mercury will also stay, depending on the form that it's in, like the form of mercury that's in fish, just the methyl mercury that could stay a very long time. And other forms of mercury to a shorter extent.
So a baby intaking lead at 6 months may have it still in their bodies at age 50, 60.
Yes, yes, and you may have that. Interesting, like men may have more because they're never going to be breastfeeding. So there's an opportunity for women to pass some of that on.
That's lovely. I don't know that that's an opportunity.
Oh, it's a vivid point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Well, a lot of your symptoms up there describe all my problems. But infant formula wasn't originally listed
Mhm.
in this, and I'm of mind, and maybe perhaps the committee is of mind to put infant formula in there.
Mhm.
Just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so infant formula is it certainly these chemicals, these metals, excuse me, have been found in infant formula. And that can be particularly harmful for babies because kiddos who are eating the baby food probably have a wider range of food intake. And so it's sort of in environmental health, dilution is the solution to pollution. So the more you're able to dilute and not have sort of an ongoing concentration, the better. So again, with the kids with the baby foods, we don't want them exposed really to any, but at least they have a wider range of food. With babies and formula, that is likely their sole source of food. And so forth. Therefore, it is much more concentrated and their little bodies are really taking a lot in.
Representative Bartholomew.
Am I still echoing?
Nope.
Okay, good. No, I was just curious. So one of the first slides talked about impact on children from infancy. Does this do these heavy metals also have an effect during pregnancy?
Yes.
Okay, so it's actually we could be looking at problems even earlier than infancy.
Mhm.
Yep. And the other question, just for semantics, we had someone point out in terms of referring to heavy metals that arsenic is neither heavy nor a metal. Is that correct?
That's correct, but
Yeah.
it was echoing a little bit. Sorry.
I'm just trying to make sure that we didn't misunderstand something from earlier testimony.
No,
thanks.
I think he's muted.
John, can you mute yourself?
I mute myself? Yes.
Before you answer, just I don't know where the issue is. It's usually not a problem when the person is not in the room with us. So, John, we'll answer the question, and when we're done, you can unmute and follow up if you need to, okay? But we're still having some kind of a technical issue. All right, let's go ahead with the, yeah.
So you're right. Arsenic is technically a metalloid. And this might matter if you're an undergraduate chemistry student where you're going to get asked that on the test. You're going to check the metalloid box. But in medicine and environmental health, they're usually grouped together. So when people say heavy metals, they will understand that arsenic is included. But it's just, a word. And if you want to phrase it differently, I think that would be fine.
So the bill should maybe say toxic heavy metals and arsenic in baby food products.
Or metalloids.
Depends how precise.
There's another phrase that you
I
used.
think we just need
Yes.
to list it.
What was, there is another option.
Heavy metals and metalloids, I think.
Okay.
I think
Oh, okay.
you're right. That would work. It would maybe reduce confusion.
Thank you. John, do you have more that you'd like to ask?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay,
Right.
let you continue then.
Great, thanks. We're wrapping up anyway. So reducing heavy metal exposure for infants and toddlers will help to reduce the risk to pediatric health outcomes. Research highlights again, there's no safe level of lead. Even low levels can impair development in children, and heavy metals can hurt children's brain, kidneys, nervous system, slow down growth, development, make it hard to learn, damage hearing and speech, and cause behavior problems. And chronic exposure may increase the risk of cancer and cause damage to the heart, to the kidneys and central nervous system. The one point that I also would just like to call out, not about health impacts, but the role of the health department. It is written in there, I believe, that the commissioner would be the one that would receive complaints and also take in the results from the manufacturers. Given that the AGO is responsible for the enforcement of the requirements of the bill, we would just say it feels more appropriate that those rest with the AGO's office than the health department. Other questions?
Otherwise, it sounds like you're supportive of the intent of the bill.
Anything that, again, reduces metals in children is going to improve outcomes, or at least reduce negative outcomes. We're still researching like what is happening in California and the other, the 4 other states that have this. What are they seeing? What is the impact of the legislation? So we don't have an official position at this point, but certainly I think the health impacts speak for themselves.
Thank you. Other questions, Representative Lippert?
Just the point that I think your testimony has been most today with regard to baby.
Oh, good.
On that. The vulnerability, that's 100% there.
Mhm.
Nutrition intake.
Thank you.
Lipsky, we had some great testimony yesterday while you were taking care of other business, and it was very compelling. Consumer reports and.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've had-
Thank you. We appreciate you having us here.
I appreciate you being.
Nice to meet you all.
We have one more witness this afternoon. It's on Paraquat Bill, and I'm not sure, is he joining us remotely?
Yes.
Yeah. Not here yet. Okay, well, we can be at ease for a couple minutes. Thank you.
Yes.
David, can I ask a question?
Yes, I'm sorry, the witnesses have left.
But no, not of that. It's of you, actually. And it doesn't matter if it's online or not.